I wasn't supposed to see her car there. My wife's silver Lexus, parked in my son-in-law's driveway, like it belonged. She told me she was across town at work. But now, my hands were cold, my breath shallow. Something was wrong, violently wrong. I crept toward the window, trying not to believe the panic clawing at my chest. And then I heard her voice smooth, cruel, familiar. When the old fool signs the papers, we'll have everything. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just being lied to. I was being erased from the life I spent 25 years building. I froze. For a full minute, I stood there outside the window, barely breathing, the keys still dangling from my fingers. Inside, the living room looked cozy, almost staged soft lighting, bookshelves, a vase of fresh tulips on the table, and my wife, lounging on the couch like she owned the place, laughing, at ease, at home, right beside her David Harper, my son-in-law, my daughter's husband, a smug bastard with a law degree and a smile that always felt 2 shades too polished. He leaned against the bookshelf like a man who believed he was untouchable. They were talking casually, comfortably, strategizing. The timeline's perfect, David was saying, his tone cold. Clipped professional, file in June. Irreconcilable differences. With Iowa's marital laws, you're entitled to half. Plus lifetime spousal support. Linda, my wife of 25 years, laughed that breathy laugh I used to find charming. The construction business alone is worth what? 12 million? 18. If you count the vacation home and the investment properties, David corrected. And don't forget the commercial spaces in Ankeny. Linda ran a hand through her freshly styled hair, inspecting her nails like a woman waiting on a spa appointment. He has no idea we've been collecting everything. Bank statements, property deeds, valuations. He practically handed us the blueprint. Us? My pulse was a freight train in my ears. I stumbled back, hands shaking, and reached for my phone. I hit record, held it low, just in case they said more. And they did. 2 years of pretending to care about roofing and cement pours, Linda said, her voice now full of disdain. You should have seen the way he lit up talking about payroll problems last month. God, he really believes I love him. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Let me back up a second. My name is Ethan Miller. I'm 60, founder and owner of Miller Craft Construction. I started this company with a rented pickup and a toolbox bought on credit. 35 years later, we build hospitals, stadiums, entire neighborhoods. Everything I built with my hands, with my time, with my trust. Linda was there from the beginning, or so I thought. She was 22 when we met, bright, witty, working as a receptionist at a downtown real estate firm. I was 37, divorced, building my business from scratch. She laughed at my terrible jokes and kissed me like I was the only man in the world. I married her 6 months later, and David, he married my daughter, Emily, 3 years ago. She's a clinical psychologist, brilliant, kind, everything I'd hoped to raise in a daughter. I thought David was a good match, polished, focused, maybe a bit ambitious, but who wasn't? What I never expected was that the 2 people closest to me, my wife and my son-in-law, would be plotting to dismantle my life piece by piece, like they were assembling a damn puzzle. Inside, Linda poured herself a glass of wine. By September, David said, you'll be divorced, wealthy, and free to do whatever you want, with whoever you want. I plan to, Linda replied with a smirk. God knows, I've waited long enough. I stayed there, frozen to the brick wall outside like a man caught in a nightmare. The love of my life was planning to gut me financially, emotionally, completely. But they didn't know I was listening. They didn't know the recorder was running. And they sure as hell didn't know who they were playing with. Has anyone else ever felt that sudden, stomach-dropping certainty that something's terribly wrong without even knowing why yet? I didn't have proof, but I had a feeling, and that feeling was about to explode. Back then, I thought I'd won the lottery not in money, but in life. Linda was 22 when we met. She had this effortless charm, the kind that didn't scream for attention but quietly took your breath away. We met at a holiday party thrown by a real estate firm I'd done some renovation work for. She was working reception. I was in my 30s, still eating instant noodles most nights and pouring every cent into my small construction business. She laughed at one of my stupid concrete jokes. I remember that laugh, it sounded like sunlight. 6 months later, she wore white and walked down the aisle toward me. For a long time, I believed we were building something real, something solid, like the homes I constructed with my own hands. She didn't come from much. Neither did I. That's probably why I worked so hard to give her everything. A warm home, stability, respect. By the time our daughter Emily was born, I was putting in 16-hour days site to site, job to job, just to make sure Linda never had to lift a finger. She didn't want to, and she was good at playing the part. Wife of a rising entrepreneur, devoted mother, proud supporter of her man. There were moments I truly believed we had something rare. Have you ever looked at someone and thought, this is it? That maybe, just maybe, you'd found the kind of love that novels and movies spend entire plots trying to capture. That was Linda. At least, the version I thought I knew. We took a cruise to Alaska for our 10th anniversary. She gasped at the glaciers like a kid seeing snow for the first time. I remember thinking, this is worth it. All the hours, all the stress, all the weight on my back, it was worth it to see her smile like that. And then there was Emily, our daughter. Born in the summer of '95, I built her nursery with my own hands, shelves, crib, even the rocking chair. Linda doted on her with fierce, radiant love. At least, it looked like love. Maybe it was, back then, before it all turned into whatever this is now. I used to catch Linda watching me while I worked on home projects. Her eyes would soften, and she'd say things like, "No one builds like you do, Ethan." And I believed her. Every word. I see now that what I thought was partnership may have just been positioning. Strategic affection. Love with an expiration date I didn't see coming. But back then, I would have bet everything my life, my legacy, that Linda Miller loved me. Turns out I did, and I lost. I used to believe numbers couldn't lie. That's why, 2 days after recording my wife and son-in-law plotting to dismantle my life, I called Marcus Webb, my retired accountant, confidant, and the only person I trusted with the full scope of my business assets. He picked up almost immediately. "You sound tired," he said. "Talk to me. Can you look into something for me?" I asked, quietly, deep. He paused. "Is this about Linda?" I didn't respond, and that was enough. I gave him full access to all my accounts, personal, joint, offshore structures he helped me set up for tax optimization years ago. I hadn't touched those accounts in a while. They weren't meant for day-to-day living. And more importantly, Linda didn't even know they existed. Or so I thought. Over the next 48 hours, Marcus combed through years of data with the precision of a forensic auditor. What he found hit harder than the betrayal I heard through that window. $85,000. That's how much Linda had moved over the past 12 months slowly. Carefully through a series of transfers from our joint savings, business distributions, and personal accounts. At first glance, nothing seemed odd. Every transaction had a benign label: Emily's grad fund, mutual portfolio adjustment, short-term retirement transfer. But the recipient account was registered to David Harper, my son-in-law, my daughter's husband, and the transactions weren't one-time anomalies. They were a pattern, structured, timed, planned, withdrawals just under standard report limits, mixed between joint and individual sources. It was a financial ambush in slow motion. I should have seen it, but I didn't because I trusted her. Linda had managed our household finances for years, not because I couldn't, but because she wanted control. And frankly, I was too busy building a company to question grocery bills or private school donations. We had systems, autopay, a monthly review I barely skimmed. She took care of the rest. And that's how she did it, right under my nose. I sat back in my chair, staring at the ceiling like it might offer some cosmic explanation. But all I found was silence and the creeping nausea of hindsight. Marcus sent over a summary document. One line made my stomach twist. March 12th, $3. $250. Label: Emily's spring tuition. Destination: Harper savings account. Emily never asked for help with tuition. She has a job, scholarships, a budget tighter than she likes to admit. And even if she had needed help, why was the money going to David's account? Unless this had never been about our daughter at all. Suddenly, all the pieces rearranged themselves. The late-night phone calls, the mysterious book club meetings, the jokes Linda made about young energy and how David understands legal things I never could. The way she started dressing differently, speaking differently, smiling differently like she was rehearsing something. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It wasn't just emotional. It might have been physical, too. That possibility twisted the knife deeper. What kind of man watches his wife slowly drift toward the man who married his daughter? What kind of woman even allows that possibility? I stood up, pushed back from the desk, paced the room twice. I felt sick. I wanted to scream, break something, anything. But I didn't, because underneath the grief and rage, something colder had started to take root. Strategy. If David and Linda thought they were moving undetected, they were wrong. They'd planned this like a heist, counting on my trust to blind me. But they didn't account for one thing. I'm not just a builder. I'm a planner, a fighter, and now I had proof. Every transaction, every false label, every misuse of trust. I forwarded Marcus's report to my secure drive, then printed a hard copy and locked it in my safe. Next, I pulled out my old project notebooks, the ones where I mapped out blueprints, deal flow, and construction timelines. I grabbed a fresh yellow legal pad and drew a new column. Assets, leverage, weaknesses, timeline, pressure points, David's financial exposure, Linda's social standing, Emily's integrity, my evidence. They'd made a critical mistake. They underestimated the man who spent 3 decades surviving city inspections, contractor lawsuits, and union standoffs. Linda thought she was married to a pushover. She was about to meet the man who built an empire from dust. The more I looked into David Harper, the less surprised I became. Marcus had flagged something odd in one of the offshore transfers, one deposit labeled as a trust retainer from a client account that didn't seem to exist. It wasn't tied to any invoice, and the name used didn't match any licensed entity. That's when I realized David wasn't just helping Linda. He was funding himself through his clients. I made a few discreet calls, old friends in legal finance, people who knew people. It didn't take long before the pieces started clicking into place. David Harper had a pattern. He'd delayed disbursements from escrow accounts, held settlement funds longer than legally allowed. Clients received their money weeks, sometimes months late, while David earned quiet interest in side accounts technically illegal, definitely unethical. There were whispers about it in Des Moines legal circles, but nothing solid had ever stuck. He was too careful, too polished. His clients were usually well off, too busy to question timing until one didn't get paid. A contractor from Chicago, a guy who'd been awarded $180 Suro in a civil dispute, David released only $140. And the man started asking questions. That's when things got interesting. Turns out, David was under preliminary review by the Iowa Bar Association. Nothing formal yet. Just a few inquiries. A nudge here. A document request there. Still, it was enough to raise my eyebrows. So I gave them what they needed to tip it over. I compiled the evidence Marcus had collected. The transfers, the false labels, the deposits into personal savings accounts with no legal justification. I included a timeline how Linda's money had ended up in David's pocket, while he was representing both family and interests. I didn't send it from my office. I drove 2 towns over, mailed it anonymously through a legal courier. No return address, just a neat label, client harm, escrow misuse, Harper Law Group. Then I sat in my truck and stared out at the gray horizon, letting the weight of what I'd just done settle in. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about exposure, control. David thought he was orchestrating a quiet, calculated takeover, using Linda as both weapon and shield. But the cracks were showing. He couldn't help himself. The same greed that made him a threat was making him sloppy, and now the bar had teeth. Once they opened a formal investigation, everything David touched would be audited, his accounts frozen, his records subpoenaed, his career dismantled one file at a time. And the best part? He wouldn't know it came from me until it was too late. I thought back to that afternoon at his house, the ease with which he'd talked about gutting me legally, the smug confidence in his voice as he explained to Linda how she'd own half of everything, and I'd barely see it coming. I saw it now. David wasn't just after money. He wanted leverage, prestige, to be seen not just as a smart lawyer, but as the man who toppled a local legend and inherited the kingdom. But he underestimated something crucial. I built my empire with calluses and contracts. I negotiated with men who made union bosses look like altar boys. I didn't survive 30 years in construction without learning how to spot rot beneath polished wood. And David? He was rotten from the core. He used my daughter as a trophy, my wife as a bank, my silence as a weapon, but not anymore. By the time this investigation ended, David wouldn't be practicing law in Iowa or anywhere else. Emily Harper had always been a woman of balance. As a clinical psychologist, she'd spent her career really listening to people's pain, confusion, trauma. She understood how easily emotions could warp perception, how victims could sometimes look like aggressors, and how even the people you loved most could carry secrets that didn't match the stories they told. Still, nothing prepared her for the day her mother sat across from her on the back patio and softly said, "Sweetheart, your father is hiding money from me." It was a sunny afternoon, the kind of day that made Iowa feel like home again. Even after Emily had moved away years ago, Linda had shown up unannounced with pastries and a nervous smile, wearing a pale pink sweater she always wore when she wanted to look fragile. Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" Linda hesitated, lowering her voice. "He's been moving money, large amounts, offshore accounts, secret assets. He's not the man you think he is." Emily felt her stomach tighten. Her parents had always been stable, not perfect, what marriage was, but solid. Her dad was predictable, driven, emotionally reserved. Her mom, warm and dramatic, sometimes overbearing, but deeply involved. They were opposites, and somehow it worked. So why now? After 25 years? Was her mother planting seeds of distrust? Linda sighed, brushing imaginary lint from her lap. "I stayed quiet for years, for your sake. But lately, I've seen things. Statements, transactions, things he never told me about. And now he's cutting me off, freezing me out like I never mattered." Her voice broke, and Emily instinctively reached across the table. But something didn't sit right. Linda was crying, but the tears felt rehearsed. Her pauses too precise, her pain too structured. Emily had been trained to read between the lines. And this story, no matter how polished, had gaps. "Did you confront him?" she asked gently. Linda shook her head. "I tried." "He dismissed me, treated me like a gold digger. After everything I gave him." She let the sentence hang in the air like bait. Emily wanted to believe her. This was her mother who read her bedtime stories, packed her school lunches, cried at every graduation. But this was also the same woman who changed friend groups every few years, who once cut off an aunt for being too controlling, and who had a strange habit of rewriting history during arguments. And lately, there'd been odd shifts. The designer bags, the vague mentions of legal help from David, the way she flinched whenever Emily asked about money. I need you to understand what I've been going through," Linda whispered. "Your father isn't who he used to be. He's cold, distant, secretive. I don't even know what he's capable of anymore." Emily's mind reeled. Her father was distant, always had been, but he was consistent. He didn't lie, at least not obviously. She watched her mother closely now, the way her fingers clenched around the coffee cup, the practiced tremble in her voice. Was this fear or performance? Later that night, Emily couldn't sleep. She pulled out old bank statements. She had access to the ones for her trust fund. Everything looked normal, but she noticed something strange. A recent withdrawal labeled educational support, yet she hadn't asked for any. The next day, she stopped by her father's office. He looked surprised, but pleased. "Hey, kiddo, everything all right?" Emily studied him for a long moment. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes tired. There was a sharpness to his posture she hadn't seen in years, like he was constantly bracing for impact. "Dad," she said slowly, "I need to ask you something." And I need you to be completely honest with me." He set down his pen. "Of course." She took a breath. "Is Mom telling the truth? About the money? About you hiding assets?" Ethan didn't react immediately. He looked at her, really looked, and in that second, Emily saw something deeper than defensiveness. She saw pain, grief, and underneath it, resolve. He leaned forward, voice low. "She came to you, didn't she?" Emily nodded. "She said you froze her accounts, that you've been hiding money overseas, that you're trying to punish her." Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then he reached into a locked drawer and pulled out a small flash drive. "I didn't want to drag you into this," he said, "but you're smart. You'll want the truth." He slid it across the table. "This has everything. The transfers, the recordings, the lies." Emily stared at the drive. Her heart ached. She didn't want this to be real. She didn't want to hear her mother's voice twisted into something manipulative. But she also knew she had to know. So she took the drive, not as a daughter choosing sides, but as a woman who refused to be lied to. I watched her press play. Emily sat on the edge of the worn leather chair in my office, the flash drive already plugged into my laptop. Her hands were steady, but her eyes were glassy. I could tell she didn't want this. She didn't want to hear what she was about to hear, but she did. At first, there was silence. Then the rustling of clothes, the clink of a wine glass, and Linda's voice soft, familiar, chilling. "When the old fool signs the papers, we'll have everything." Emily flinched. I saw it, like a nerve under her skin had twitched hard. She didn't say anything. Then came David's voice, calm, calculating. "I've already reviewed the prenup loopholes. He won't see it coming." And Linda again, laughing. 25 years for a payoff like this. Worth every minute. Emily brought a hand to her mouth. Her eyes stayed wide open dry, but unblinking. I didn't say a word. Just let the recording play out. Every poisonous word filling the air like gas. I didn't want to soften it, didn't want to interpret it. She needed to hear the truth for herself unfiltered. When it ended, she sat in silence for maybe a full minute. Then, quietly, she asked, "How long have you known?" "A few days," I replied. "I wasn't going to tell you. I didn't want you caught in the middle." She nodded, slowly. "Too late for that now." Her voice cracked on the last word. I stood but didn't approach her. She needed space. Maybe more than that. She needed clarity. Room to process the fact that the two people she trusted most had manipulated her from both sides. She looked at me, and I swear I saw something in her expression shatter. Not just pain, but disgust. "David," she whispered. He knew I loved her. He used that, yes, I said, and she let him. That was when her hands finally shook. All her training, all those years of learning to remain calm, centered, rational, it peeled away like wet wallpaper. Underneath, she was just a daughter and a wife, torn in two. "I kept defending them," she said, almost to herself. "I thought maybe you were bitter, overreacting. You weren't wrong to want to believe the best in people." I told her, "That's what makes you good." She shook her head, biting her lip. Then she looked at me, steady, clear, decisive. "What are you going to do?" "I'm not sure yet," I said. "But when the time comes, I may need someone who knows the difference between truth and performance. Someone willing to speak up." Emily stared at me for a long beat. Then she nodded. "I'll testify." If it comes to that, I didn't expect the wave that hit me then. I'd braced myself for rage, for collapse, even rejection. But not this, not solidarity. I reached for her hand. She took it. And in that moment, for the first time since this entire nightmare began, I didn't feel alone. I moved out 2 weeks ago. Linda didn't question it. I told her the office was running late hours. Too noisy, too chaotic to work from home anymore. She nodded, offered a distracted okay, and barely looked up from her phone. She'd grown so comfortable, so certain of her control, she didn't even see it as a threat. That was fine by me. The truth. I couldn't stomach sleeping under the same roof anymore. Not after what I'd heard through that window. So I packed a few bags, quietly signed a month-to-month lease on a serviced apartment downtown, and disappeared into my own strategy. Now, seated at my desk with the morning sun cutting through the blinds. I called Marcus. "Shut it all down," I said. "Every shared account, trust access, corporate draws tied to Linda. Terminate." He didn't ask why. You got it. 15 minutes later, the notifications started rolling in. Transaction blocked, $2. 400, Linda Miller, Saks Fifth Avenue. Auto debit declined. Luxury lease payment. Harper account. Unauthorized access attempt. Joint portfolio login. Denied. Marcus had moved fast. Everything was locked. Credit cards. Digital platforms. Even the investment fund we once used for Emily's education. That account, she'd secretly rerouted into David's name. It was gone now, frozen. Linda didn't feel it right away. She probably thought it was a glitch, a system issue. But then the second card failed. Then the app wouldn't refresh. Then her beauty subscription bounced. And that's when the panic began. By noon, she called. I let it ring. 2 hours later, another call. Then an email. Subject: "Is this some kind of mistake? Call me Linda." I didn't respond. This wasn't about hurting her. This was about removing the oxygen from a fire I hadn't started but was now determined to contain. David felt it faster. The side funnel he'd used hidden accounts linked to Harper Holdings had dried up. He filed an internal request with his firm's finance officer. Flagged. Delayed. And with the Iowa Bar Association now actively investigating his escrow violations, he had nowhere to pull from. Marcus called me around 4 p.m. "You'll love this," he said. "Linda's accountant just tried to verify joint asset access. Got stonewalled. David called our bank liaison 3 times, no dice." I said nothing. Just sat there, the taste of bitter satisfaction quietly settling behind my teeth. That night, at 11, according to 3 p.m., my phone rang again. Linda. I stared at the screen for a moment before answering. "Ethan," she said. Her voice was smaller than I remembered. "What's happening? I can't access anything. My cards aren't working. Did something happen?" "Everything's fine," I said. "I've just adjusted the permissions." "You froze everything," she snapped. "You're being cruel." "No," I replied, calm as ever. "I'm being responsible. You're punishing me." "No," I said. "I'm protecting myself. From you." Silence. "Then you're overreacting. You're not thinking clearly." I laughed, softly. "Linda, I've never been clearer. You're the one who underestimated me." She hung up. And that was it. The house of cards had started to crumble. Without access to the money, she and David were exposed no leverage, no liquidity. And with the Bar Association breathing down David's neck, not even his legal career to lean on, I thought about the woman I married, the vows we made. And then I thought about that voice on the recording. 25 years for a payoff like this. Now she had nothing. Not because I took it away, but because she forgot the one thing more dangerous than betrayal is underestimating the man you betrayed. Emily didn't tell me what she was going to do. She just grabbed her coat, said, "I'll be back in a bit," and walked out the apartment door with a focus I hadn't seen since the day she got into graduate school. I didn't ask where she was going. I knew she was going to face Linda. An hour later, she came back quiet, pale, jaw tight. She didn't cry, didn't speak, just sat on the couch, stared at the wall for a while, and said one sentence. I told her everything. I nodded. How did she take it? Emily exhaled slowly. She broke a glass, called me ungrateful, then tried to blame you, then cried. That sounds like her. She kept saying I didn't understand, that I was choosing you. And what did you say? I told her I wasn't choosing anyone. I was choosing truth. I didn't respond, just looked at her and felt something shift inside me. Pride, mostly, and grief, because no father ever wants to watch his daughter dismantle her belief in her mother. But that's what Linda had earned. That afternoon, the rest started unraveling fast. Words spread through their social circles like fire through dry brush. Women she'd lunched with every Thursday. The ones who used to compliment her handbags and envy her house gone. Not a single one returned her texts. The annual fundraiser she co-chaired, she was replaced. Quietly, no explanation. The real blow came at the club. She showed up in pearls and that cream blazer she wore when she wanted to look neutral. But nobody saved her a seat. Nobody even looked up. By evening, she was off every guest list she cared about. Even the charity gala she helped plan for 10 years sent a polite message saying, "Thank you for your past contributions." They didn't care about facts. They didn't need the whole story. All they knew was that her daughter, the calm, educated, beloved Emily had turned her back. And David? He took a harder hit. 3 clients gone within 2 days. One of them even published a public statement. "We hold our legal counsel to the highest standards. Harper no longer meets those." The Bar Association had moved quickly. Once the complaint was formalized, they launched a full audit. Every escrow, every trust, every transaction tied to his firm. Within a week, he was on unpaid leave. His office door had a new nameplate. His email, suspended. He tried calling a few judges he once played tennis with. No one answered. I heard through Marcus that David had tried reaching out to a potential investor for a private firm. They didn't even return the pitch. He'd gone from rising star to cautionary tale in less than 10 days. Linda called me that night. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. Her voice was ragged. "She hates me?" "No," I said. "She saw you. She's my daughter. She's a woman now. She knows the difference between love and manipulation." Linda went silent for a beat. "Then, you've destroyed everything." "No," I replied. "You did." I just stopped pretending it wasn't happening. She hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone. 25 years? That's how long I spent trying to build something solid for our family. And in the end, it wasn't lawsuits or assets that broke us. It was the truth, finally catching up. Linda lost her image. David lost his career. And me, I got my daughter back. That was more than I thought I'd ever see again. After the courtroom went quiet and the lies fell in on themselves, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still. That's how most betrayal stories really end, not with cheers, but with silence. I walked out into the morning air and looked up. I didn't say much, just a quiet thank you to God for giving me the wisdom to wait, not react, for giving me a daughter who saw truth, for walking beside me when everything else was crumbling. There are hundreds of betrayal stories out there, but few remind you that surviving them isn't about revenge. It's about release. I don't carry hatred. I carry clarity. God didn't strike anyone down for me. He simply reminded me who I was and who I wasn't meant to be with. So, if this story feels a little like yours or someone you know, tell me, what did you learn from your own betrayal stories? Because sometimes healing starts with speaking it out loud.